There are two known things in the universe: ethereal substances and physical, corporeal substances. The former is the solvent of the latter. For comparison, take a lump of table salt, which, though white, is impervious to the sight of a person. Cast it into water and it is lost to sight, though it still exists. However, the sight of a person cannot see it. Earth substance, as such, is equally soluble in ether, and the great etherium firmament is thus constituted, being a dense solution of physical substance. In the main, etheria is transparent, but in some places translucent and in some others opaque. Here are iron and copper and granite and water and lead and clay and nitrogen and oxygen and hydrogen and their various other force powers. Magnetism, erroneously called, is less than the horseshoe form. The power of a magnet decreases in proportion to the square of the distance from it. Under certain conditions, one leg of the magnet repels things from it. As previously stated, this is nevertheless one current, which power flows through the magnet even as water flows through a tube. This propelling power of the magnet also decreases in proportion to the square of the distance from it. If the poles of a signal magnet are exposed, it will in time decrease from its maximum power until it ultimately becomes the same capacity as to external things, even as if the poles were closed by juxtaposition with another magnet. Here it will be observed that were the sun or moon or earth the most powerful still magnet, it would not be a long time, as the time of worlds, when its magnetic attraction would not exceed native iron ore. Here it will also be observed that were the moon of a globe of magnetic iron ore, it would be shown approximately how far it would extend its power of magnetic attraction external to itself. Nevertheless, its magnetic attraction in that extreme case would not be on mortar or clay, but on iron and its kindred ores, so that if the moon exerted a magnetic force on the earth, it would manifest more on the magnetic needle, or on other substance, than on the water of the ocean. By suspending a ball of magnetic iron alongside a suspended cup of water, it will be discovered there is no magnetic attraction between them, more than between two cups of water or between two vessels of clay. The highest magnetic power that can be imparted to steel in the form of a ball to its equatorial dimension to manifest in moving an equivalent fellow is several of its diameters, but in the case of iron ore, a normal magnet, it is very considerably less than this. By this it is shown that were the moon a steel magnet, it would not exert perceptible power more than 9,000 miles. Her shortest distance from the Earth is 220,000 miles. Here it is shown that under the most extravagant supposition of power, her magnetic attraction is more than 200,000 times short of reaching the Earth kinds of physical substances as known on the Earth, and besides these, millions of things not known on the Earth. And ether holds them in solution, even after the manner that the air holds the substance of clouds, which is water in solution. And as some clouds are so rarefied as to be imperceptible, while others are opaque and even black, so are the comparative conditions of etheria. In the case of a force vortex in etheria, the physical solutions are propelled toward the center in greater density, just as in the manner of a whirlwind on the earth. When it is sufficiently dense to manifest light and shadow, it is called a comet or nebula, and when still more dense, it is a planet. When as a comet or a nebula, the neg force has not attained to an orbit of its own, it is carried in the currents of the master force, which currents are elliptic, parabolic, and hyperbolic. Hence the so-called eclectic travel of comets. At this age of the comet, it shows nearly the configuration of its own force, its tail being the neg power. If it appears to the east of the sun, its tail turns eastward. If west of the sun, it turns westward. Two directions of power are thus manifested, and also two powers. First, that the force of the sun has power from the east to the west, and from the west to the east, to which the comet is subjected. Second, that the comet has a force of its own, which is sufficient under the circumstances to maintain the general form of the comet. The ordinary comet has its tail away from the sun, but some comets have two tails, one toward the sun and one away. Interior nebulae is generally described as comets, whilst exterior nebulae is just called nebulae. Nevertheless, all such solutions of physical substance are of a like nature, being as the beginning or as the incomplete condensation of a planet. They do not all, nor half of them, ripen into planets, but their forces are often broken and they return again into sublimated solutions and are often lost to mortal sight. But nowhere in Etheria is there a solution of physical substance sufficient to put itself in motion, nor sufficient to condense itself, nor to provide the road of its travel. But its road of travel shows the direction of the lines of the sun's force, save and except in such case when a comet's force comes within the force of another planet's force of greater power than its own. As a cyclone or whirlwind on the earth travels with the general current of the wind, so travels the sub-forces in Etheria within the axial lines of forces in chief. Wherein within the sun's force, or external thereto, the rules apply so far as nebulae or comets are concerned, and the forces that carry them. Axial velocity belongs to all of them, and the tendency of all of them is to orbits, to which they attain or not according to their strength compared to the master vortex. When a nebulous planet is sufficiently dense to have its physical substance polarized, but so that its polarity corresponds to the polarity of the master, it is transparent and possesses no eclipse power. But when a nebula is polarized transversely, it is as a cloud in Etheria, with power to eclipse suns, and even to eclipse the sun itself, provided it be within the solar force. Of external nebulae of sufficient size to be self-sustaining and to ultimately become planets, there are at present visible from the Earth more than 8,000. These are in the process of globe making, even as the Earth was made. Of nebulae within the Sun's force, there are usually called comets. There are upward of 8 or 10 new ones every year. Some of them survive but a few months, some a few years, some 100 years, and even some 1,000 or more years. But in all cases, when the force of one of them bursts, the physical substance of the comet flies instantly into dissolution, more sublimated, and is lost to mortal sight.